no gold is not enough.
When I was about 6 years old, my very first experience with Sonic the Hedgehog was through Sonic Gems collection. At the time, I had no idea what Sonic the Hedgehog was, no idea what Chaos Emeralds were, and I hadn't even discovered the world of early 2010 Sonic the Hedgehog GMVs on YouTube, also known as some of the cringiest shit on the planet.
Who made this?
I don't know what clicked in my dumb autistic brain when I played this game for the first time, but something about that blue hedgehog and his red and white shoes stole my heart from the moment I popped in that disc. And from that moment, I was hooked. Over the next few years, I would play dozens of Sonic's games, which included such titles as Sonic Rush, Sonic Classics Collection, and even Shadow the Hedgehog. You know, that game that opens with Shadow cocking an MP5 like a shotgun and killing Sonic the Hedgehog, the main character of the franchise. Man, 2006 was a different year. What else was popular in 2006? Well, that explains a lot. But after playing through those games, I would end up playing one Sonic game in particular. A Sonic game that blew my dumb 7-year-old mind out of my skull when I saw it for the first time. A Sonic game that, despite making no sense in concept, looked like Sonic the Hedgehog meets SSX. For Christmas of 2011, I ended up getting Sonic Riders Zero Gravity for the Nintendo Wii. And I mean, could you really blame 7-year-old me? It was Sonic the goddamn Hedgehog on a hoverboard with a green goose trailing not too far behind. This looked like the coolest game in the world when I was younger. I played this game for hours on my Wii, and genuinely remember running home from school and popping in the game disc as soon as I got in the front door. I played through this game several times as a kid, and I even remember one instance when I finally got to the final boss of the game, and I just couldn't beat him. I spent weeks upon weeks trying to beat him, and one day, I finally did, and I kid you not when I say that was one of my proudest childhood memories as a kid. Finally, beating this game felt like a dream come true. I played this game so much that at one point, the disc actually stopped working, and my dad had to take it to a repair shop to get the disc fixed. I loved this game like a son. But that was back in 2011, and now it's 2023. I've aged 12 years since I last played this game, and I'm picking it up again for the first time in well over a decade. Also, I'm fully aware about what people are going to say before this review even starts, that being, why aren't you reviewing the original Sonic Riders? And the reason for that is simple. I have never played it. I have no childhood attachment to it whatsoever. Sonic Riders Zero Gravity was my first, and currently only, introduction to the Sonic Riders series. So I can't be comparing this game to the original. I'm fully aware I'm going to miss a bit of story continuity here and there, since I didn't play the first, so please try to bear with me. With that being said, let's review Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. But before we hop into the review, I'd like to give a very quick shout out to the folks over at The Wormhole on YouTube. As you guys might already be aware of, I was supposed to do this review months ago, but unfortunately due to my save file becoming corrupted and me losing all of my footage due to several fits of unluckiness, I wasn't able to record any more footage for this game. So thankfully, the folks over at The Wormhole have allowed me to borrow their footage from their long play of Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. I will leave a link to the folks over at The Wormhole in the description, and I highly recommend you check out their content, as without their help, this video straight up would not be happening. With that being said, let's hop into the review. The game opens up with a CGI cinematic. Hey guys, remember when Sonic the Hedgehog games opened up with these? As we get a good look at this futuristic city at nighttime, a meteor suddenly appears in the distance and crashes into the ground, landing near a bunch of security robots. The very next day, Tails, Sonic, and Knuckles are driving around in their hover car, don't question it, when they start discussing the meteor crash that occurred last night. Turns out the meteor wasn't actually a meteor, but was actually a bracelet? Yet, despite it clearly looking like a bracelet, they keep referring to it as a stone. For some reason, don't question it. Turns out, Tails managed to get his hands on the stone in the middle of the night. How exactly? I'm fully aware that the robots didn't wake up when the meteor crashed, but I'm pretty sure they'd be programmed to at least wake up when someone enters the premises in the middle of the night. Especially if it was a meteor from outer space. All of a sudden, robots attack! A bunch of the robots who were there when the meteor crashed last night start attacking Sonic and the gang, for seemingly no reason. Wow, Sonic Team beat Twitter to portraying law enforcement as the bad guys by about 10 years. The gang start to get overwhelmed, and eventually come up with an idea. And just like that, folks, it's over. Aw, who am I kidding? Of course the game doesn't end there. Despite the wall literally exploding, the gang survives the impact, with Tails and Knuckles gliding around without a care in the world. Meanwhile, Sonic is falling to his literal death. Wow, now Sonic's friends are the bad guys. Sonic Team beat themselves to their own idea by 5 years. As Sonic is about to smack the pavement, he somehow uses the stone to freeze himself in place. And what does he do immediately after stopping himself from falling to his death? He launches himself at the ground even faster than before. And now he is dead. I'm repeating a lot of jokes in this review, aren't I? We're then brought to the main menu, where we can choose from a variety of options. For the sake of the review, I'll be sticking to the story mode. The story is split up into two halves, that being the hero story and the Babylon story. Upon hopping to the hero story, we are greeted by the exact same opening cutscene. After we skip literally the exact same opening cutscene, we transition into a race, where we play as Sonic on the first track in the game, Megalo Station. The game then gives us a goal for the race, which is to evade the robot assault. Objective-based races? Consider me intrigued. Anyways, we start racing and— Lord help! I am extremely far ahead of all the others. Why am I still flying? So, yeah, Sonic Rider Zero Gravity does a lot of unique things to spice up the standard racing formula, both for better and for worse. The first major gameplay mechanic is gravity. By collecting pickups and timing tricks, you add gravity to this gauge at the bottom of the screen. You can then use this gravity to perform gravity control and the gravity dive. What's the gravity dive? Oh god, not again! Gravity control allows you to turn sharp corners by freezing yourself in place and shooting you in the current direction you're facing. Gravity dive does— Okay, all jokes aside, the gravity dive is basically just your character flying in a straight line down the track at Mach 10 speed. Both these mechanics are cool, as they mix up the pace of a race, allowing for even the slowest and safest of tracks to get hectic every now and again. While these abilities are really interesting, with seemingly endless potential for track exploration, they are severely limited. The tracks in this game were designed with the gravity powers in mind, but the tracks make it way too obvious when they're required. The game has these signs plastered all over the track that show you where and when you're supposed to do specific gravity moves, and the game constantly gives you pop-ups telling you exactly when to use the tricks. While these are helpful for new players, they take a lot of the discovery out of the courses. Instead of the tracks feeling like open landscapes I can explore at my leisure, something that games like SSX nail to a T, this game feels very handholdy. It's almost as if the game itself doesn't trust me enough to play on my own, and is helicopter parenting me through the whole game. Another mechanic in this game is the gear system. When you collect enough rings, you can trade them in for new gear. Every character has their own set of gear, which allow them to all do unique things. Sonic's gear allows him to grind rails, Tails' gear allows him to fly through these rings into shortcuts, and Knuckles' gear allows him to morph his board into a bike, which allows him to— punch? I don't think you need a bike to do that. You have fists. I actually don't mind the gameplay of Zero Gravity all that much, despite what I've just said. Is it gimmicky? Yes. Is it terrible? No. This game is its own little thing, and I can respect that. As for the track itself, Megalo Station isn't that bad. It includes instances where the player gets to use most of the main mechanics of the game, and has some good music, which, thankfully, is something that I can say for the entire soundtrack of the game. There's some good bops in here. Megalo Station is the definition of a basic starter track. But for a basic starter track, I've got no complaints here. Anyways, I win the first race, and— wait a minute. Didn't the game say my objective was to evade the robot assault? How is racing around the track 3 times in a row going to get these robots off my tail exactly? Yeah, in case you couldn't tell, this is one of the biggest narrative problems with Zero Gravity, that being the context you're given as to why you're racing. The game constantly gives you objectives like evade the robot assault, escape the robot trap, and evade the Babylon rogues, which all could be interesting concepts for races, but all these objectives boil down to just getting first place. I'm not evading anyone, and I'm certainly not escaping anywhere. All I'm doing is going around in a circle. Could you imagine being told to escape Bowser in Mario Kart, only to play a 9-lap race of Baby Park? Wouldn't that be the most jarring thing you've ever had to play? After flying around Megalo Station, the gang managed to escape to the Botanical Kingdom, where they meet Amy. For some reason. Turns out Amy also found one of the stones, which resulted in the robots chasing her as well. We know Amy has the stone because it literally clips into existence as it falls from her waist.
How did they miss this?
The gang gets spotted, and in order to escape the robots, we race around this track for 3 laps as Tails! This track is certainly better than Megalo Station, that's for sure. Visually, it's one of the best tracks in the game, and it plays great as well. Lots of flying, shortcuts, and slingshots. It's actually quite fun. After escaping, the gang decides to head to Mediotech HQ to figure out why the robots are acting up, since Mediotech are the ones who produce the robots. Oh look, it's the green goose again. Yes, I'm aware he's not a goose, Jesus, it's a joke. These chaps are known as the Babylon Rogues and are comprised of Jet, Storm, and Wave. They're here at Mediotech to search for the Arcs of the Cosmos, whatever those are. Apparently they link into their ancestry, but at this point we've known them for all of 20 seconds, so I honestly couldn't care less. We then play as Knuckles and race through Mediotech HQ, which is another solid track. I'd argue this is the best track so far. It has tons of verticality, looks different when compared to the tracks that came before it, having a purple industrial look, and also has some more boppin' music to go alongside it. After racing to the control room of Mediotech, we discovered that the owner of the company is Dr. Eggman! What a shocker! After meeting Eggman, the group discovers that, apparently, the reason the robots attacked them earlier was because of the stones that they found, which also turn out to be the same arcs of the cosmos that the rogues are looking for. The stones are able to produce their own gravitational pull, and are able to act as an almost infinite source of energy. As a result of this, Eggman is currently using one to power all of Mediotech. Because of the stone's power, the robots are starting to cause chaos on a global scale, which means that for once, Eggman is actually the good guy. He just wants to figure out how to fix the robots and use the stones to power his business. Somehow, during all of this, Storm and Amy have both gone missing. Turns out, Storm got the bright idea to start heckling Amy for her stone by chasing her down. To make the situation even worse, the head chief of the robots is chasing them down. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles start to give chase in the game's 4th level, known as the Aquatic Capital. This level is water-themed and plays very differently when compared to the previous tracks. There's lots of areas that divide the course in two, forcing you to choose a direction while you attempt to steer against the constant current. It's alright. Not amazing, but it's alright. After racing around in circles, the gang then find Amy, but find that the stones are gone. Not just that, but the robot that was chasing them has seemingly exploded. Why? Don't question it. The gang then decide that the next best place to explore to look for answers is a place known as the Gigan Rocks. Apparently, the archaeological history behind the Gigan Rocks might actually play into the history of the Arcs of the Cosmos that the Babylon Rogues are so obsessed with. Knuckles even speculates that one of the Arcs might even still be there. The 5th level ends up being the titular Gigan Rocks, and this, by far, is the best level in the entire game. There's lots of pure drops that allow you to reach absurd speeds, massive ramps that shoot you into the sky like a cannon, and a killer backdrop in the form of the mountainous Gigan Rock region. Out of all the tracks in the game, this is the one I always come back to. The gang then make it to the site that Knuckles was talking about, and discover that it actually exists. Unfortunately, the rogues have already taken the Ark, which means that they're one step behind again. Realizing that the only Ark left is the one owned by Eggman, Sonic and the gang rush to the global HQ for meteor tech known as the Crimson Tower. Just as suspected, they find the Babylon rogues ready to break into the tower, but discover that the reason they are at the tower is to get their own arcs back. Turns out that Eggman stole their arcs and is planning on using them to get back control of his robots. Once he does that, he'll use the remaining energy of the arcs to take over every robot in the world, giving him access to what is essentially an unlimited robotic army. This leads to the final level, Crimson Crater, where Team Hero and Team Babylon both race up the tower to be the first one to recapture the Arcs of the Cosmos. This track is fine. It still plays very well, and has some highlights in the form of the wall that fires you up into the main track like a pinball. But outside of that, this track is about average. After the masterpiece that was the Gig and Rocks, this track feels very tame by comparison. At least it makes an honest-to-god attempt to get the most out of the gravity mechanics. After Sonic and Jet get to the control room, they retrieve the stolen arcs. As the group attempts to figure out who gets the arcs, Sonic simply gives up his arc and leaves, citing that he doesn't need it and that if Jet wants it so badly, he can just have it. Roll credits. No, I'm serious. After this scene, the credits roll. The game ends. Oh, who am I kidding? Of course the game doesn't end there. Jesus Christ, I really am repeating a lot of jokes in this review. What we just played was the hero story. We still haven't experienced the Babylon story. And to save you the torture that is hearing me drone on and on about the story, all I'll say is this. The Babylon story runs in direct parallel with the hero story. So throughout this story, we see what the rogues were doing while the heroes were running around. This includes showing us how the rogues got to the Gig and Rocks before the heroes, and how the robot exploded, which was just it overloading due to the arc. This path even shows us how Eggman, big old lumpy Eggman, stole the arcs all for himself. And just for your viewing pleasure, I'm going to play that scene in its entirety because it is unironically one of the funniest scenes in Sonic history, and it must be seen to be believed.
Lightless black? What the heck does that mean?
Who can say? What are your thoughts?
How should I know? Anyway, we can leave the thinking for later. For now, we need to collect these arcs of the... Huh? Huh. Why the dirty! Sneak onto my ship, will he? Full speed ahead! Follow him!
I have so many questions, and knowing this game, I'm not getting any answers. Alongside showing you the flip side of what happened to the rogues, you also play on remixed versions of the hero tracks. Some of these are pretty cool, and some of them make no sense. How is this level coated in snow? We were here about an hour ago! After completing the Babylon side of the story, we figure out what happened after Sonic gave up his arc. It turns out the arcs are keys that are required to open and operate a place known as the Babylon Garden, a racetrack that was created by the ancestors of the Babylon Rogues. The track just so happens to be orbiting outside of the Crimson Tower, which is a case of convenience so absurd I can't even begin to comment on it. Just as Team Hero was about to leave, the police robot that exploded earlier, yes, that one, bursts through the window, attacks Wave, steals all of the arcs, and flies off to Babylon Garden, activating it, which results in the track becoming a black hole!
What? What the fuck?
Eggman dips, which leaves only Team Hero and Team Babylon as the only ones who can fix the mess. So naturally, they fly into the black hole to shut down the power source.
What?
This leads to the game's final level, known as the Mobius Strip, where you have to race around an endless course, attempting to sever the power source of the black hole from the garden. This source happens to be the robot that stole the arcs, who is now known as the Abyss. In order to win this race, you need to race to the end of the track and use the gravity dive to crash into Abyss. Once you do this 3 times, Abyss will become fully severed from the garden, and you win the race. The one thing about this, however, is that you must be the one to hit Abyss. If anyone else does, you have to restart and do another lap of the track. Plus, you're on a timer, so if you run out of time, you automatically lose the race, even if you're technically in first. I remember this course being impossible when I was a kid, as the AI would always pull out in front of me and hit Abyss before I could. So, with that being said, how long do you think it took me to beat this track? 30 minutes? An hour? 2 hours? 3 minutes. Yeah, either this race is nowhere near as hard as people make it out to be, or RNGesus decided to bestow its blessings upon me, because I beat this race on my first go. Yeah, I'm as stunned as you are, to be honest. With the Arcs and Abyss being removed from the garden, the black hole dissipates, and the garden floats off into orbit. Sonic and the gang go back to living their normal lives, that is until Jet decides to challenge Sonic to one final match, something that the Blue Blur just can't say no to. Roll the credits. I mean, the story is not awful, but it's not amazing either. After you beat the main story, you actually unlock a few bonus characters and tracks to use, which is a nice way of rewarding the player for putting up with whatever kind of story I just saw. The bonus tracks you unlock are quite possibly my favorite part of the entire game, as they are among some of the best tracks in the game. You unlock the tracks 80s Boulevard and 90s Boulevard, which are packed to the cheeks with references to old Sega IPs, yet still manage to be fun and engaging, requiring the full usage of the gravity mechanics in order to stay ahead, while encouraging the use of all the various playstyles. And then, there's Astral Babylon, which is a rectangle. We don't talk about Astral Babylon. Overall, Sonic Riders Zero Gravity is a mixed bag. It's fun at points, with the track design and graphics being the game's main upsides, but unfortunately, almost everything else falls flat. The gameplay is gimmicky and constantly handholds the player. The story is so poor and so nonsensical that it comes full circle and makes me laugh my ass off, and the lack of reasoning behind the races makes the story feel disconnected from the game you're actually trying to play. I don't think that this game is bad. Genuinely, I think that it can actually be quite fun in short bursts. But if you're hopping into the game specifically to play the story mode to unlock everything, you're gonna quickly become exhausted by the game. I do truly believe there is a good game under here. It's just a shame that it's buried underneath all this gimmicky and poorly written fluff. Would I personally recommend it? No. While yes, it's fun to me, that's probably just nostalgia talking. If you see this game on a shelf for $5, it's a decent time. Anything more, and I'd just say, give it a pass.